welcome to the Soul Health Mentor podcast. I'm Nadia Shana Kraus, author of From Dreaming to Done and founder of Soul Health Mentor and Company. Here we bring the human and the soul together. We talk about finishing the dream your soul has never let go of through embodiment, clarity, and wholeness, because we are souls having a human experience, not in exchange for, but in inclusion of. This is the Soul Health Mentor way. Welcome back to the Soul Health Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Nadia, and I am so excited to talk to author Danielle C. Baker today. She is the founder of Being Connected e-learning, has 20 plus years of experience in teaching and education. She's an early childhood educator, and she does so much. She's also, like I mentioned, an author. She has a podcast. She has a TV show, and I'm just so looking forward to talking to you today, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Nadia, for having me on. I'm really excited to be chatting with you today.
Yeah, you wrote a book which sounds amazing, Bringing Up the World, and how we can help little humans be their best selves, right? What inspired
Yes.
you to write this book?
The main reason, there's quite a few, but being in the field of early childhood education for so long, I got to see both of, I was a supervisor for daycare programs and after school programs. So I was caught in between the two worlds of the parents wanting the best for their children and the education system that is caught up in a lot of policies and things. So they were kind of clashing, although we put the children in the heart of our programming. Sometimes the policies go against that. So I've noticed working with children, I worked with children who did have struggle in a traditional learning environment. So I would help them, and it's easy to help children, but I would hand them back to parents who are just in survival mode, right? They're dealing with their children's education, with everything else in life. So it really did, maybe 10, 15 years back, I was thinking we need something that can be used as a tool for parents to know that they are doing great as parents, with what they have and what they can do. They are great parents. There's not one parent out there who wakes up in the morning and say, how can I mess up my child today? Right. So I was thinking through all of my experience, my own personal experience as a mother, but also as an educator, is managed to find steps that parents can take to kind of take their role back as their child's first and most important educator, but also how to build their village around what they need as a parent and what their children need as a parent, as opposed to what people are telling them they should have. So that's really how it happened. And then with the pandemic, of course, I had time. So I started writing it. I started working around it. I rewrote it about 3 different times. And so this is, children are not born with a manual, but I figured I would write the next best thing to help parents show up the way that they actually want to with their children.
What I love about what you just shared is really that you built a bridge. And I love that you have this experience, like 20 plus years as an early childhood educator. But I know that the children know you as the fun auntie. So there again, you're this beautiful bridge between knowledge, but also very, very grounded, very, how do we implement this? I absolutely love that about your work. And I'm a childless woman, but I do feel the bringing up the world in the sense of I talk about dreams, right? And for me, the dreams that I've brought up in this world were like my children, nurturing, and they needed safety and they needed things that work. So the
Yeah.
first thing I know, your first message seems to be that the parents need to know that they're doing great. And you also talk about that the parents doing well means their children will do well. Self-care is really important, right?
Yes. It is so important because children don't listen to us, they watch us. So they listen to us when they shouldn't be listening to us, but they are watching us. So it's setting the example. If you want your children to have a healthy life, both physically, mentally, with their relationships, they're watching us. So how we interact with others, how we interact with the other parent, no matter what the situation is. Uh, they are taking notes on that. That is the blueprint we're creating for them to go and look for that later on. So it is so important to know where we are as a parent and where we would need the help because we clearly can't do it all by ourselves. That's why I don't like to use the term our village, but it really is what that is.
Mhm.
So taking care of yourself, knowing what triggers you. Our children will trigger us because that's where the unconditional love is. So they are not out to get us. They are just mirrors to us. They're reflecting back where we need to heal, where our little child inside of us really needed some work. So not all of us are ready to face that, right? The ego and the pride kicks in. So it is important to start with your values. That's what I start with. Your values. How do you want to? What do you stand for, and how do you want to show up as a parent? And then teach your children through actions on you have to live it for your children to really know how to do it. So it is the most important thing to teach your children. So yes, it is important. It's not selfish. It's actually part of raising strong, well-balanced human beings. So you're doing yourself a favor and you're doing the world a favor by taking care of yourself first.
Ah, there's so many golden nuggets in what you just shared. So I just want to reflect back. So the part where self-care is also self-awareness, right? What are my needs? What are my values? Then our children watch us, and I can so relate because I remember watching my parents, and I remember drawing conclusions from they're saying one thing and they're living another. So I noticed that it wasn't coherent, it wasn't balanced, it wasn't harmonious. And the part where you said it's our inner children, sometimes our inner child that needs the healing. So, my husband and I very consciously chose not to have children, but we've been doing the work to heal our inner child.
Mhm.
We've been doing the work of reparenting us and really finding the triggers. So there's so much value in that. And that you bring this in, the feeling I'm getting, and I know your book touches on many things like why it's important to focus on yourself as a parent, but also how you can make small adjustments and key questions you
Mhm.
can ask yourself. There's so many things that we could touch on. What I do want to highlight, it feels very holistic. It feels very
Yes.
holistic. So holistic always means, oh my goodness, we could do so much. We could do so much. What I would love to focus on is that obviously in your book, all of that is laid out, right? And I invite the listeners to check out Danielle's book, Bringing Up the World, and we'll talk later where you can find the book. What I wanted to ask you now, since I have you on the show, what are the three things that you like to start with? If there's parents listening and they're like, oh, I love what Danielle is saying. Yes, the bridge between the education system and me as their parent. What are the three things you start with?
There's I could talk forever on that one. I will try to keep stay focused, but I first want to mention because you've mentioned it as well, and I want to that was a very important point that you made. It even if you don't have children or if you're grandparents, your children are grown, we still have an impact or an influence on children. So this is where, for me, uh, titling the book "Bringing Up the World" is that every human, the children are watching their parents because they're the first people of the outside world that they know. But somebody having a tantrum in a parking lot at the grocery store, they're watching that as well. So we all have an impact. So it is important, like you were saying, for you and your husband to make that conscious choice of saying we need to parent our inner child. And as parents, we will often parent our children the way we would have wished we would have been parented. So when you find out you're going to have a child, you often say, or when you were growing up and say, I will never raise my children like this, or this is how I want to raise my children. So this is the so that the first thing you need to do to finally get to your question is to go to reevaluate your values. You need to go through your values. It's not something that we are taught to deal with. We hear about values, we have family values, if you within the community, the churches and all of that. So you're raised with respect and love and honesty, integrity, all of that. But are they really yours? Your core values of who you are, they're non-negotiable. This is who you are at the source. It's your essence. So Are you picking up outdated values that don't work for you? It worked in the family setting. Now you're just doing it because that's how it was. So the first thing I work with is your values. What do you stand for? What is non-negotiable for you? Because once you know what your values are, this is how you set your boundaries with all of your interactions in your life. And this is when you know that this is non-negotiable. You don't allow people to overstep your boundaries when you are solid on who you are. And this is so important to teach your children. So, like you said, there's some conflicting what your parents say versus what they're actually doing. This creates a sense of insecurity. It's you're creating an environment without knowing it. Your children are not going to feel safe, and it is so important to create that connection with your child. So you need to walk your talk, and if you don't, the child will feel unsafe because they think we're saying one thing, but we're doing something else, and I don't want to do something wrong. This is all my fault. I'm not a good child. This snowballs. So get clear on your values, what they represent to you, and how you want to show up as a parent. That would be the first thing. And then from there, I work with what do you need as a parent to show up the way you want to show up? Because we all have those moments where our children are going to trigger us. And then later on, we're just like, oh, I didn't handle this properly. And whether or not we explain that to our children, it depends. Sometimes we don't want to admit it. We just kind of pretend it never happened. That leaves a mark as well for the kids. But it's just to say, okay, where do I need the help? Where do I need to look and take care of my inner child, like you've explained earlier, and how do I work? Because children is just one part of your life. You have the finances, you have your relationships, so how do you balance that? So I do a lot of work. I call it life work balance, but I used to work with 8 different environments of your life. Now I've added the ninth one, which is the digital environment. What is your relationship with devices? Because that's also a very big thing right now. So we have a really holistic, wholesome view of how you show up. And if you actually walk your talk in 9 different areas of your life, so it could be finances, your spirituality, everything. And then, of course, I work with how can you support your child? Get to know your child, not the way you want your child to be, but how your child actually is. And how can you support them and how you can communicate that with the schools to make sure that they are just giving all the tools that they need to be able to function and thrive when they're adults as well.
Oh, I love listening to you. It makes my inner child glow. Everything it really does because and I can say this because I've done the work. I love how you
Yeah,
explained that the parents saying one thing and not living what they're saying creates insecurity for the child. I can so relate to that. I never felt
yeah,
safe in my household, and I can so relate to um, it actually is where my people-pleasing tendencies started. It literally is a
exactly.
coping mechanism to please your parents, your guardians, to be safe. And while that works as a child, as an adult, those tendencies are not good. They're not healthy. They when you're a people pleaser, you can't uphold boundaries. And listening to you, what I love so much is that my husband and I literally, because we've been working on our childhood trauma and all the things, um, and at one point, we did think of children, but it was just not, life took us a different way. At one point, we met very young, and at one point, it wasn't clear if we were going to stay together. I wasn't someone that would dream of being pregnant, dream of having a child. I was dreaming of a good marriage, a good life, a fulfilled life. And if children
Yeah.
are part of that because we are a team, then so be it. But we weren't a team for the longest time. And I think in our conversation before, you had mentioned how important, before we started recording, how important it is for parents to get their values on board. Because if the parents have different values, that's going to cause conflict with the children, right?
That's right. And it creates even if it's not directed at the children, is the fact that there is conflict between the parents. The children, this is the very important point for parents to understand is children don't see faults in adults. Adults are perfect to them. And that's just a survival instinct. because it's the adults that are keeping them alive, right? So they're feeding them, they're taking care of them when they're sick or hurt. So anytime there is conflict between the adults, they automatically think that there's something wrong with them, that they did something bad. And again, we're creating that unsafe environment. But it is very important, and this is the work that I do with the values, is we need to get clear on your values first, but then after that, it would be your spouse, the co-parent, and anywhere in your relationships. It could be with your parents, your siblings, your neighbor, your coworkers. But everybody, when you start doing the work that I do, there's 5 different modules, and one of them is not just to find out what those values are, but what they actually mean to you. And you will find when you do that work with a group of people is everybody has a different definition of respect or love or honesty. Or so we could get together with a life partner who we talk about respect, and we talk about love, and we talk about all of these values. We're on the same page, we have the same values. I found the one, but turns out that we don't have the same definition of what that looks like. So now you're in conflict, and it doesn't have to be a full-blown conflict, but you don't feel right. It doesn't feel right. Things seem difficult, things seem hard, and you're more reactive. So it's usually because the values are not aligned. So if you can get clear on that, and I love that you mentioned your experience with your husband, because it's okay to have those conversations, and it's okay to admit that wherever you are in your healing journey, that maybe we're just not, children are just not part of that equation yet, or ever. People get guilt, again, those old values that people get guilt into having children
Mm.
when they don't feel ready. And this is how we're creating generational patterns, is if the parents don't heal that part of them, they that's their legacy. They're handing that back to their children. Now their children have to deal with it, and so on and so on. So if you're able to end it with you by saying, I'm going to do the work. Your
Hmm.
parents didn't hurt you intentionally. And I'm saying you in
Hmm.
general.
Hmm.
They were just trying to figure it out too, just like we're trying to figure it out now. Our parents were also trying to figure it out back then, but we thought they were perfect. So we thought they already had it all figured out. So that's how it works. It's so important to put the cards on the table with your life partner and say, this is what that means to me. This is the where I draw the line. This is a hard no for me. And
Hmm.
then see if you can make it work. But if you can't make it work, you need to go on to the next move, the next step, because this is what you're teaching your child, how to handle relationships in their lives.
Oh, so many nuggets. Ah, I love listening to you. I do. I love listening to you. I love what you do. I love your work. I love that you wrote this book. I love that you help parents because in our quest of finding ourselves, of finding what we want, what our values are, and being faced with having married young and then not quite sure if we're going to stay together, me making the decision that I didn't want to be a single mom. And we would also say things like, you have to have a license to get a car. We kind of wish
Mhm.
parents would have to have a license or not, license sounds a bit harsh, but just guidance, help, support, right?
Right.
And that's what I love, that you have these 3 areas, like starting with values and then moving on to work-life balance. I like to call it work-life integration. That's how I
I
like to
love
talk
that.
about it, because it all
Yes,
happens all at once, right? Balance is a bit of an illusion. It's more, how can we integrate all the things and be okay and not burn out? And then the learning styles, that's also something that I love for the child. I love that because my parents didn't do harm because it wasn't done maliciously at all. They just did what
yes,
their parents did. And it is so wise of you to say that, drawing the line in the sand, because literally that's what we did. And not everybody understands that. Not everybody understands because of those traditional values. You're supposed to marry and have children. But
definitely.
drawing the line in the sand was like, no, we don't want to. we don't want to carry on that legacy. And what I wanted to share with you is, and maybe you can relate, that's why I'm sharing. So I had a little part-time job in Germany as a teacher's assistant. So I have not a background in children, but I can change diapers and I can feed children. And so for a little while, for 1 year, I was in this children's learning academy, and I was doing just that. I was just a teacher's assistant, helping with feeding and diapers. And I caught myself doing something that totally shocked me. I I basically behaved in a certain way that I actually condone, but
Hmm.
what my dad did to me. And I did it to a child, and I was in that moment so shocked because it's not something I planned, it just happened. So
Yeah.
so that's the work as well, right?
Oh, yes. And that reactive behavior, we all have it. And that's why I say children show us where we need to heal.
Hmm.
Because yes, it's deep rooted in us. Those wounds are deep rooted in us. And for me, it was talk back. Yeah, because in my family, that was a huge no-no. But yeah, if a child would talk back to me, it took me a while, especially in my early years, where I would just kind of start boiling up and I'd be like, whew, okay, let's do this. But yeah, and those kind of reactions that you just described can scare parents when they have those reactions come out of them with their own children that they love, they would kill for, they would die for them. They would, uh, it gets scary because now you're putting again that guilt on you. I'm a bad parent. I'm not doing great. I'm not. So this is why I like to keep bringing that gentleness to parents to say, as a parent, you are doing great where you are at.
Hmm.
Once we get past some of your hurdles, you're going to be doing great in a different capacity. So it's just always you are doing great. The fact that you feel guilty or that you noticed it is a sign that you're a good person at the core. People that don't care are the bad ones. So yeah, I love that you brought that up as an example because that's where you realize, okay, I have some work to do. Instead of blaming the child and say, oh, that child is out to get me, or they just wanted to give me a hard time. The child just needs to feel safe and wanted.
Hmm.
So it's then you have to go back inwards and say, okay, why did I react that way, and do the work from there. That's why the self-care is so important as a parent to make sure that you're not just passing the torch on to the children.
Yes, and you mentioned something earlier. So you mentioned something now saying, going back and asking yourself, why did I do that? And earlier in our conversation, you mentioned that so many parents are in survival mode. So I want to put the two together. So when we're in some survival mode, it's very, very hard to take a pause and to reflect because you're just trying to survive. And then that survival mode gets passed on to your child because that's what happened with my parents. My parents were just trying to survive. So they didn't have the time
Exactly.
to reflect or to go inwards. And here I was at the Children's Learning Academy, completely shocked. And I'll just share the situation, just it might help the listeners. It was nap time, and I think I
Mm.
had maybe 6, 7 children in the room. Um, and all of them were sleeping, and one little girl was crying, was very emotional. And in that moment, the survival pattern that kicks in, and you know this because you're early childhood educator, sometimes this one child can wake up everybody else. So it's
Everybody.
really, really, oh, it's a really hard situation. So I was trying to calm her down, but I did the thing my dad does, and my dad would do this manipulative thing of be a good girl. And if you don't behave in
Ah,
this
yeah.
in this way, then you're not a good girl. And I did that. And the moment I did it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what did I just do?" And then I reflected and I went into the healing for myself. It was literally in that moment, this child was this beautiful mirror for my own healing. It's what my dad did to me. And now that this aspect is healed, I would react completely different. Now I would say to this little girl, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry. I would literally explain the situation to her. I would say, but you see how everybody's sleeping? Let's not wake them up. And then I would probably ask, what do you need to feel better? Right? And maybe she
Yeah,
would answer, I need my blanket. I need my toy, or I need a hug. And oh
yeah,
my gosh, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this to you because I did not know this back then. And I'm trying to think back. That was in 2010. That was 15
mhm.
years ago, where I did not know what was going on. And then through the inner child healing work, now I would be a completely different caregiver.
That's right. That's right. I love that because it could be something just as subtle as things that we've always, yeah, be a good
Yeah.
girl. How many times have we heard that? And it's not a violent reaction. It's not an abusive reaction, but it's just a little something that for a child who thinks an adult is perfect, now they know they've just disappointed the adult, and now they're
Yes.
thinking, okay, I'm a bad person. I'm not good,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's we know from into adulthood what that brings. Like you said, people pleasers, not able to set boundaries or not able to say no. So it is and I don't want to overwhelm the listeners either. It's a long process, like you say.
Yes.
It could take
Yes.
decades, and not to be hard on yourself to say, why did I not get it then? Because you couldn't, you're not there, but it's the fact that you've noticed the progress already. You know that you're in the right, you're heading in the right direction. But it's always that kind of gentle, be nice, just celebrate I call them micro wins in the book, where the little things that matter. Not that we focus on the big milestones, but those little things, like I didn't yell at my child today or I didn't react. I actually took a breath and asked what they needed. Just those tiny little things, those are the moments you need to be celebrating as a parent, to say, okay, even if you take 5 minutes in your car when you get home from work and just breathe so that you're not coming home dumping all the stress from work onto your children. So those are so important. It's and I love doing that work with parents when they see the work that they've done, and now it's just they know how to do it, how to approach their children. Because the other thing that happens is every child is different. So what worked with your first one is not going to work with your second one. So now you have to rediscover yourself. And that second child's going to bring out another wound that you had. And you're thinking, how many times do I have to heal to get this? So you need to be gentle with yourself and explain to the child, yeah, this is what you're feeling. Explain what you wish people would have explained to you when you were a child, so that
Yes.
they're ready for it. They're a step ahead when they get into adulthood.
Yeah. I love that you said that parents, or it's almost like a permission slip to let parents
Yeah.
know that don't feel guilty. This is not a bad thing. You are healing. And what I wanted to just share at this point in time, children are very forgiving. Their little brains are still very, very pliable. So in my healing journey of healing the inner child, the wounding, I discovered something called emotional brain training. And it
Mhm.
took me 18 months. I worked through different modules to rewire those circuits that caused me stress as a child. And I remember reading in that book, and it's true, that children can do it in 3 months. Like it'll take an adult
Yeah.
18 months because it's years and years and decades of life, right? And so I just wanted to
Yeah.
add that as well, that just starting the journey, if the listeners are inspired by you, Danielle, and your book, the first step is getting the book. So where can they get the book?
The easiest places is Amazon or Indigo, Chapters, Kohl's bookstores. I am on in Barnes and Nobles and some of the other more independent bookstores. So it is quite easy to get access to it. Depending on where in the world the listeners are, Amazon is probably one of the easiest ones. But on my website as well, there's a link where you can go straight to the area where you can buy the book.
And tell us the full title. So it's Bringing Up the World, and what is the subtitle?
Yes. How to finally focus on what matters and watch the child bloom. And
Yay.
spoiler alert, what matters the most is the child. So when we're that's in my book, I do mention that because this is like the two worlds that I lived in with the education system and parents is we make a lot of decisions that we think will be beneficial to the child and then realize later on that that's not what the child needed. So we can come up with great solutions, but I say let's check in with the boss, and the boss is the child. Is this right? Is this working? So that we can make the changes before we've established laws and policies and made a budget for something that's not going to hold. So let's put the focus back on the child. Let's forget our struggles and our patterns, and let's focus on the child.
Amazing. And you mentioned that there's these three things. You start off with values, then you go into life work balance or life work integration, and then talking about the learning styles of the child.
Mhm.
Now, if the listeners are interested in learning more about that, where can they go to find out more about the things that you do?
My website will most likely be the best place to go. So if you go to beingconnected.ca, you will get most of the information there. There's a lot of resources. There's access to my podcast there as well, my book, my TV show. But mostly, I do have some tools that parents can use when it comes to learning styles. There's a lot of misconceptions about learning styles, but I work with 6 different ones, and it's really who the children are at the core and how they learn. So I'm a big advocate of teaching children the way they learn as opposed to having them learn the way we teach. I do have some tools where parents, this is done through play. So from the minute they are born, you can find out some of your child's learning styles. So then you can work with that to get them to learn different things and to get passionate about learning. So there is, first of all, there is a 2-minute quiz for you to find out what your learning styles are. It's one of the reasons why I created the book is when I worked with children. This is all for working with children, but the parents would come back and say, God, I wish I would have known this back in, my life would have been so much easier, right? So I said, okay, well, so now this is a book for the parents. When I was saying I rewrote the book about 3 different times. So there's a quick 2-minute quiz to find out what your learning style is. You have to think of it like personality traits. You have some dominant ones. You don't just have one. You have dominant ones and secondary ones. But there's also, I have an ebook that just came out that's called Teach the Way They Learn. And inside that book, it's a very short book on what the learning styles are, how they show up in play, and how you can accommodate your either home or classroom to motivate the children there. There's some lesson plans on because you don't want to be doing 6 different ways of teaching. You could do it all in one, and and how to play with your child so that you can find out how they learn. So that helps a lot as well. And then of course there's the book that is a great tool to work with, not just with your children, but everybody that you have relationships with.
I love that. So beingconnected.ca, you can find the support containers that Danielle has. You can find the
Yes.
free resource. I love that. The quiz. I'm definitely going to take it. That's awesome because I can so relate to, oh my goodness, I wish my mom or my parents would have known this. Yes. Or yes,
Right.
I can relate. And I am so grateful you were here today. It was such an amazing conversation to have about your book, about your work, and about the things you offer. Thank you, Danielle, for being here.
Thank you so much, Nadia, for doing this too. I love this. So I could talk about this all day, obviously, but I really do appreciate the work that you do as well. It goes very well with what I do. And thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I just wanted to thank the listeners for being here today. And even though we were talking about children and bringing up the world, I just wanted to remind you that a dream is also something you're bringing up in the world. And it doesn't matter if you're a parent or you're a childless woman like me. If you feel inspired by this podcast episode, visit soulhealthmentor.com, upvote the episode, and maybe leave a comment. Leave a comment of your biggest aha of the episode. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. If something in this conversation stirred your body, whispered to your heart, or woke up a dream you've been carrying, that's not random, that's resonance. If you want to walk this path with me and join a community of grounded visionaries learning to finish what their soul began, download your Soul Map gift by visiting soulhealthmentor.com and clicking on the book icon. And if you loved this episode, share it with someone whose dream deserves to be finished, or write a review of your experience on Apple Podcasts or Amazon Music. Here we root and rise together. one completed dream at a time.